Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate all your support. Welcome back to Daisy Asks. I took a couple of days off. Wasn't actually as many days off as I thought I would, but with the Tom Webster interview airing yesterday, my time, maybe still today, your time, I felt like I couldn't not address some of the stuff that was coming up because there's this whole pro guilt kind of rally around it. And I can't stay quiet when I see misinformation going around that makes it seem as though Rick is guilty when he is not, in my opinion. So, today, what I'm going to do is just start to pick apart a few of the claims, I suppose, of Tom Webster. And I recorded a little bit of a video so that I could be in the chat while I'm doing this. So there's a half an hour video. I'm going to play that and then I'll come back and chat a bit more if we want to, if people are up for it. I know it's not, again, a very good time for a lot of the people who like to watch my videos, but still appreciate those who are already in here. And everyone else, I hope, will catch the replay and let me know what they think. So without further ado, I'm going to pop this video on and let you listen to my ramblings. I feel like today there's just so much. I think when you know the Delphi case really well, like all of you do, it becomes super impossible to condense everything. So whilst I could absolutely do this debate, I'd love to do it. It would probably be like more than 6 hours. You can see how it gets to 6 hours, right? Because there's just so much information to pull. And having OCD means that I am a stickler for precision and details and ensuring that everything I'm saying is backed up. So, yeah, this could take me a lot of parts to fully do justice to. But let's start with part one and his video. Now, I'm going to admit I haven't watched the entire Tom Webster debate with Andy and Jennifer just yet. And the reason for that's, well, multiple reasons, I suppose. One is I'm not sure I have the stomach for it. The little parts that I have heard so far have made me cranky. But also, I don't really have 6 hours free to just listen to it. I have ADHD too, so I think it would be really hard for me to dedicate that many hours in a row. So I'll probably have to do it in bits. I'll probably do it when I'm doing some gardening or something monotonous, like a cleaning task, and I'll listen to it in the background or something. But I'll get to it eventually. I don't feel like I really need to listen to it, though, to have enough of an idea of what would be said and what's going to make me roll my eyes, etc., etc. But what I did do is I looked at the comment section and I looked at Tom Webster's comment about why he believes Rick is guilty and what he would need us Free Rick Allen people to answer for if we were to debate him. And I could quite happily debate him. Now, I meant to do a video like this a few days ago because we already had enough from the 16-minute preview to basically break down. But the reason that I didn't do that was because I realized as I started to debate Tom Webster of my own accord, I was also disagreeing with a lot of the defense's ideas. And I knew that wouldn't be too well received in the community. But now that I've seen the full, I suppose, argument that Tom Webster makes, and I've heard it before, but not for a few months, I was willing to put together a response to at least some of his points, if not all of them, over time. So I have been a bit hesitant to do this, as I said, because my ideas, my rebuttals are absolutely in favor of Richard Allen. Everyone who watches my channel would know that I am advocating for Richard Allen. I believe he's an innocent man, and I disagree with the people who believe Rick is guilty. But I also disagree largely with a lot of the defense's ideas as well. So it makes it a pretty hard position to work from. Anyway, bear with me. I'm going to go through the key arguments that Tom Webster makes about Rick's guilt one by one over the next little while and see if we can, not see if we can, I know we can, pull apart this theory of guilt when it comes to Richard Allen and the Delphi murders. So, without further ado, I'm going to start with this particular point, though, that he makes a big, big deal about. So, I wanted to focus on one claim that I heard Tom Webster make, and I've heard him say it before. And I also saw some people in his comments also talking about it. And this is this claim that Richard Allen said he saw someone at the bridge. And I'm going to talk through what Rick actually says in his October 2022 interview, where he talks about who he saw. We're going to look at his words verbatim, and then we're going to make a decision for ourselves whether what's being said is actually fair or whether it actually aligns better with my hypothesis around the timeline for that day. Okay, so I'm going to read Tom Webster's exact words during the debate. He says, Rick said there may have been somebody at the bridge. Like, why is that not important to us? He never told in 2017. He never told police he saw somebody. In the PCA that he told Doolan, he only referenced the 3 girls. He did not see anybody else. 2022, he tells Liggett and Mullen, there may have been somebody at the bridge as I was coming back through. To me, that's pretty incriminating. And the only person I can think of is Betsy Blair. Okay, so that's what Tom said. And I'm not going to go into what Jennifer and Andy said. I think they make some okay points, but I want to make a massive point here because when we hear what Tom's suggesting, he's trying to link Rick's words to Betsy Blair seeing someone on platform 1 at around 1:53 p.m. and they don't add up. So let me bring Rick's actual words onto the screen. Okay, so here we see what Rick actually says. This is the transcript from the interview with Mullen and Liggett in 2022. And Rick says, I don't remember seeing, like I told him, I may have seen, there may have been somebody on the bridge or something when I was coming back through, but I didn't. The only ones that I really noticed seeing were those 3 girls. So let's just go back to this part about the bridge. I told him I may have seen, there may have been somebody on the bridge or something when I was coming back through. Now, how does that align with Betsy Blair? Betsy Blair was not on the bridge. I know people will say it's semantics, but it's very different to her being at the bridge. And on top of that, notice what he says, when I was coming back through. And what we know about Rick's movements that day is that he didn't go to the bridge and then leave from the bridge. Let's track his movements again using my little map. Okay, so according to Rick, he enters somewhere around here and he walks this way up to the bridge. He goes to the first platform, looks down for fish, turns around, heads back to this bench here, the 505 bench, sits here for a few minutes, and then leaves. So if he's suggesting that there could have been someone on the bridge when he was coming back around, then that can't be Betsy Blair standing here when Rick Allen's on the bridge. It also can't be someone on the bridge during that gap where he's walking down here, unless he's thinking someone's coming from the bridge from the other side, which is highly unlikely. Instead, what this appears to be to me is that Rick is conceding that while he's sitting here on the 505 bench, it's possible that someone walked behind him and went to the bridge. And I think that's a pretty plausible scenario because when you're sitting on the 505 bench, you're kind of looking out over the water, you're contemplating life, you're looking at the stock ticker on your phone. You probably wouldn't notice people walking behind you, or at least you wouldn't kind of register them on a really conscious level. Now, in the timeline that I suggest, Rick is sitting here on this bench when potentially Bridge Guy walks past and when Betsy Blair might even walk past too. And so it's quite possible that he did notice maybe some shuffling or ruffling behind him, but he didn't take too much notice. He wasn't particularly concerned. In fact, it seems he went there for solitude that day. So he didn't really want any interaction with people. So he wouldn't necessarily look around. I want you to ask yourself this when you're sitting in a beautiful park, having a nice relaxing time in the middle of the day, do you look around and notice everybody walking behind you? Because I can tell you I definitely don't. And so again, this really just doesn't line up with what Tom is trying to make it out to be. Semantics aside, the wording on multiple parts of that statement that Rick gives do not match with what Tom is suggesting. What they do match with is a man who's trying to be 100% accurate. And he's saying the only people I remembered was the girls, but there could have been other people around passing behind me on the bridge. It's possible. Of course, it's possible. And in fact, as I've said, according to the timeline I've suggested, I feel like there's almost this sort of brief recognition that people are passing behind him. At least one person is. And therefore, if they were passing behind him and headed this way, and he's heading back this way as he's leaving, they would potentially be on the bridge. I think that's all that Rick's getting at. He's not getting at someone being on the bridge at the same time as him, because that would be pretty obvious. And he's not getting at someone standing here at the rails while he's on the bridge, because he says there could have been someone on the bridge as I was coming back. He doesn't say approaching the bridge or walking ahead of me or anything like that. He says somebody on the bridge when I was coming back through. And coming back through doesn't suggest he's on the bridge. I hope that makes sense. I think it's important though. So let's get back to some of Tom's conclusions. So what I did here was I took his comment off the video where he's really pointed out his sort of theory, I suppose, of Rick's guilt. And I got ChatGPT to summarize them for me, because reading a whole amalgamated comment of things just wasn't good for my brain. I needed it broken down. These are the main points that Tom makes. I've watched his summary of why he thinks Rick's guilty from months back before, so a lot of these I was already familiar with, but always good to go back over the arguments, because it's really hard to debunk or debate someone if you don't know their full argument. I make that point again because I really do spend so much time looking at all sides of this, because I can't say someone's wrong without actually knowing what they said. So we did that, guys. And here we have an entire list of the things that Tom Webster says. And I have an entire list of reasons why he's misinformed for a lot of this. Now, I want to point out something. Tom Webster makes a fairly logical, coherent type of argument. He's certainly not throwing around really absurd ideas, but unfortunately there's just little cracks in each of his argument. And when you put all those little cracks together, that whole argument is fractured. So I do want to give full respect that Tom Webster isn't making some completely absurd claims of guilt, like some that I've heard. However, some of his claims, or every one of his claims, has just little aspects of them that are incorrect. And when you put them all together, it creates a very flawed thesis. Okay, so let's go through. So we've got timeline and witness claims. Now, this works on both sides. I think both sides make a big ado about the fact that people didn't see each other. And I understand that. I guess there's not that many people on the trails that day, and so we would assume that people do see each other. However, memory doesn't always work like that. And for anyone who's watched my channel throughout all of these months, you'll know that I did my little field studies where I walked on trails. And obviously I was walking on trails knowing I was walking on trails trying to test my memory. So not a super accurate memory test. However, even with my mind trying to register who I was seeing as I walked on a fairly kind of quiet trail system here, I still struggled to notice and remember everybody just minutes later, let alone days later, weeks later, years later. Our memory is incredibly fallible, particularly when it's just a memory of a routine day. So a lot of the witnesses to this crime, well, in fact, every single one of them didn't actually witness the crime itself. And as such, the memories weren't super salient until after the fact. So a lot of this stuff just didn't stick particularly well. And that's not a sign that witnesses are lying. It's not a sign that Rick is lying. It's just an artifact of memory. Anyway, what I've got on the screen here is clearly not my claims or my arguments. These are Tom Webster's arguments. So let's just go over the first one, and then I will speak a little bit more about my thoughts. So he says that he doesn't believe Rick is innocent. He believes Rick is guilty because Rick was not seen by Betsy or the four girls between 12 and 1:26 p.m. Now, this is the point at which already I'm going to diverge from the typical Free Rick Allen theory, because I don't believe that Rick was on the trails between 12 and 1 o'clock. I believe he arrived at the trails around 1 o'clock and left probably just before 2. So for me, I don't feel that there were many attempts, probably not the word attempts, many chances for Betsy Blair to actually cross paths with Rick Allen, because I believe Rick Allen basically gets around the Mears Trail Split area just after Betsy Blair has left. So Betsy Blair and him are not going to cross paths while she's there for her first round of walking the trails that day. What I do think is that Rick does see 3 of the 4 girls. Again, unpopular opinion, but I don't believe he sees them at Freedom Bridge. Again, we've talked about this at length, and See-Through loves this argument with me. But I think that based again on Rick's own words, on his own statement to Mullins and Liggett, that he sees the 4 girls, he says they're leaving the trails, and it seems like they're headed back to where the cars are parked. And we'll go back to my map, and I'll show you where the cars are parked. Rick only ever talks about cars being parked here at the Mears Farm entrance. Now, if he enters the trail at 1 o'clock and he walks this way, or just after 1, and he walks this way, Betsy Blair's off, she's gone, and the other girls, the 4 girls, are basically around here. They're down here, and then they're headed back here for 1:26. So if he's walking across here and he's here around, let's say, 1:15, 1:20, then what we would expect is that those girls are walking back this way. They're coming off this trail. And if he thinks they're headed back to where the cars are parked, it means that they're around this area. It seems as though he crossed paths directly with them. So they would be coming from this way, he's coming from this way, and then he continues on to the bridge. Now, if he says he sees the girls here and walks this way, then they would be following him if they were headed back to where the cars are parked. There are no other locations where he discusses cars being parked. So that's the key kind of anchor I'm using. And again, this is part of his statement. It's not something that I am inventing out of nowhere. In fact, I've shown this before, but we can go through it again. I'm going to read out the specific words that he uses. So give me 1 sec. I'm just going to find it. So he says, I remember there being 2 vehicles down there on the farmer's entrance. When he's talking about cars being parked, he only ever mentions cars at the Mears, not where he parked. Nowhere else is there a parking spot that he saw near the trails. Now he says he sees the 3 girls up around the trail, around the trailhead is what he calls it. Now we know Kelsey German also calls the trail split the trailhead, as do other witnesses. Now he says, I was walking towards them, and they obviously stood out. So again, he was walking towards them. He wasn't walking behind them. He wasn't walking away from them. He was walking towards them. And then later he says, I'd say they were leaving. I'm assuming they were leaving, or they came from down where those cars parked and they were heading back that way. I don't know. So he's basically again suggesting that these particular girls Oops. Sorry, guys. I've got the map off here. Here it is. So he's walking and he basically walks towards them. Okay. And he says they're leaving back, or they came from where the cars were parked and they're heading back there. Now, if it's this trailhead and he's walking, according to the state's theory, this way and going like this, well, then they'd have to be walking that way, right? But then where are the cars parked? Where's he headed back to? They came from where the cars were parked and they were heading back there, but where would they be heading back to? So there are no cars parked anywhere here. The cars are parked here. So he says he walks, sees them coming off the trail around the trailhead. This can also be called the trailhead. And it appears that they're going back to where the cars are parked. Well, this is where the cars are parked. So again, it's semantics, but I think it's important because there's no cars parked here. So which cars is he suggesting they're heading back to? Because they can't be walking this way along, because he wouldn't walk into them then. He wouldn't cross paths with them. They'd be ahead of him. Okay, I've made that point many a time, and let's get back to some of the other points that Tom Webster is raising. So even if that theory is incorrect, and even if Rick Allen did not pass those girls then, it's quite possible that people don't remember each other on a trail, because we know the four girls do not see Betsy Blair, and Betsy Blair doesn't see the four girls except when she's driving back from her toilet break. Additionally, people will say, well, if Rick isn't Bridge Guy and he saw the girls but they didn't see him, they only saw Bridge Guy, he must be Bridge Guy. But again, we have to remember our memory is going to be more accurate, and we're more likely to remember things that are salient. And everybody describes Bridge Guy as someone pretty scary. He has a vibe about him that is creepy, and that's why they remember him. I go back to that day when I walked the trails near. I go back to that day where I walked the trails on my little mini break, and I did the field studies, and I can still remember the grumpy old man that I saw. I can remember vaguely some of the other people, but I couldn't tell you as many details. Again, it's the salient memories that show up. Rick was just a general dad, right? And so teenage girls are not really looking around. When they see someone who looks like their dad, they're not really noticing that, particularly if they're mucking around, taking photos, having fun together. The last thing they're noticing is a man walking past who really doesn't have any sort of negative energy about him. Clearly, when they walk past Bridge Guy, they are more taken by him because he has more a vibe about him that worries them. So if we take this all together, the timeline, witness claims, I guess the whole point of what Tom is trying to say is that nobody sees Rick there. Rick doesn't seem to see Betsy Blair. And basically, the girls who potentially he sees and who see him are the girls that say they see Bridge Guy. And so essentially, therefore, he must be Bridge Guy. I think we can quite easily debunk that on multiple bases there, as I said, because many people did not see each other that day. Oh, that's right. I want to go back one point here. So he says Betsy walked the full trail twice between those times and would have passed the bench Rick said he sat on multiple times, yet they never saw each other. So the 505 bench is another really key part here of this argument. Let's go to the 505 bench. So here it is there, and I think I've actually got a picture of it as well. Give me a second. Okay, so this is a 505 bench. You can see it's hidden here, tucked behind a tree off the trails. So you can quite easily see how somebody could be walking back and forth there and not really notice Rick sitting here, and how he could not completely notice someone walking behind him. It's not quite as absurd as it sounds. He's not on a bench sitting here facing the trails. He's literally over there facing the water. So it's quite possible that somebody could be on this bench and not notice other people around them and not be noticed. It's literally off the main path. It's not far off the main path, but it's far enough that you would probably not notice it unless you were glancing that way. And he would not notice people around him unless he was hyper vigilant at that point, which I doubt he was. Okay, let's go to his next point. So, this is where we see Tom Webster starts to get into the fact that he thinks Rick lies by changing the timing. And essentially, again, we're missing the nuance about how memory works when we are suggesting that someone's time changing over 5 years is super suspicious. Because memory for everyday events is not like a video recording. It's constructed or reconstructed around a few salient anchors and often compressed in time. Our memories use anchors. People tend to date and organize experiences by linking them to notable events rather than exact clock times or timestamps. And we kind of use anchors like a reference point. Surrounding moments are kind of placed before or after them when a person reconstructs what's happened. And so if we think about Rick that day, the salient moment of that day was visiting his mum in the morning. And that memory is salient. It was out of his normal routine, I'd imagine. And it's salient because it's seeing family. And he's got a fairly firm, solid memory of that. His memory for going to the trails and having a casual walk is less time stamped in his mind. And you can see what happens here a lot of the time is we get this sort of compression of information. We kind of replay it in our mind, and we often describe a shorter, edited version that skips the less important segments and compresses it all in. And so, yeah, things are often pulled closer together. Again, I always ask people to try this stuff on themselves, and most of us make errors when it comes to this sort of sequence and timing, particularly of the sequence of events. So if I go back to that day that I took that walk and did the field studies, I know that I had driven to the mountains, which was where I was staying for a few days, and I had got there and settled at about 2 or 3 o'clock. And I decided to go for a walk around the time where the kangaroos would start coming out. So I think I probably would have been on those trails. Oh, goodness. Did I do it on the first day or the second day as well? I don't even remember. I actually can't remember. So it could have been, if it was the first day, then like I said, I got there at about 2 or 3, so it would have been about 5. But if it was the second day, I think it was earlier. I think it was like 3. So you see, this is just from a few months ago. I went away in October 2025. We're now in January 2026. I recorded the little field study I was doing, so I was paying quite a bit of attention to what I was doing. I can, like I said, vaguely remember most of the people I walked past, but it's super vague. But the time, I can't remember. I'm trying to anchor it to whether it was the first day that I got there. And I know what time I got into my Airbnb because of the check-in time. But I'm also thinking about, the dark and light and the fact that the kangaroos were supposed to come out at about 5 and I saw a kangaroo, but I can't remember because I did that walk a couple of times over a few days. So you can just see how that's not me trying to lie. It's basically just a shift in timelines, a compression and anchoring onto different events. And you can see again here, guys, why we can't take that as suspicious that he may have changed or got a different time on different occasions. I mean, we even see that there's the 1 to 3, then there's the 1:30 to 3:30, and then 5 years later, he's not very concise or he's not very precise is probably the better word to use about the timing then either, because he says probably like 12 to 1, 1:30, 1:45. Like he's so all over the place with that. And that's not abnormal, as you can see, because I'm doing the exact same thing, only it's only been 3 months for me. Pretty big difference. Okay, that's all I'm going to do for now. And I'm going to play this live and have a chat with you guys as we do this. So I'm sure it will be longer than the 30 minutes it is now. So I will see you in the chat. Okay, so that was just a few points. I really didn't want to cover everything in one go. Also, because, as I said before, I have a brain that needs everything to be precise and checked. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't make any claims that I couldn't back up. But so far, I think I've kind of covered three of the issues. One, I feel like I've covered this idea that Rick saw Betsy Blair. The wording just doesn't add up for that. And that was the main one I wanted to cover today because it really is just, to me, as soon as you read the wording, it does not make sense that that could be him admitting in Tom Webster's kind of mind that he saw Betsy Blair when he was on the bridge. I ran this past Dee too, but Dee's probably asleep now. Dee is great with linguistics, that's her expertise area. And she agreed with me, not just because she's my friend, because we don't always agree on everything, but she agreed to. And at some point, we'll get her to come up and join us when she's awake and give her view on some of the wording in the interview as well, because I know that Rick's wording is what gets spun in different directions. See-through's made that point that I think, it gets twisted. Sure, I think it gets twisted on both sides. I think people twist Rick's words to agree with the narrative that they already have. So, yeah, I kind of think that we can't probably seriously know one way or another what he means because nobody actually clarified it. They clarified certain things over and over and over again, like where he parked, but they didn't clarify where he saw the girls. They didn't clarify, how long he sat on the bench for. And, there are so many things that could have been clarified better and just weren't. And I know that we can go back to that being, maybe the police, the law enforcement just made mistakes. But I don't think you make mistakes when you're interviewing the person that you believe is the offender of this horrific homicide many, many years later. I think you're more likely to be super precise, particularly when you're part of a department that apparently recorded over the first, 70 days of interviews and, made all these other errors. You'd think now they would be like, okay, we've got this guy. Let's be really precise in our questioning of him. It just doesn't make sense. And I think if they were precise, there would be so much less arguing, wouldn't there, about the timeline? The thing that really gets me is that the timeline actually didn't need to be this hard because they had Hoosier Harvest Store timestamps of vehicles coming in and out. We only found those more recently through see-through, finding that really obscure exhibit that showed the different cars when, who said who was parked where when they went past the Hoosier Harvest Store. I mean, that really helped to anchor the timeline for some of the later witnesses, the people after the crime that were there. But then also we've got the fact that there was geofencing and a cost analysis done that absolutely would have given not maybe the most granular data about where people specifically went at exactly the right time, but it would have certainly given an indication of who was on the trails at which times in those windows. And there weren't so many people on there that you wouldn't be able to follow them. I think that it's ludicrous in my mind. They didn't do that. Gilletta makes a point that there were other people on the trails at that time and it was loaded with people and even if there were more people, it's still within the range in terms of not in terms of what you're saying, Gilletta. I agree with you. I think they make out that there could only possibly have been that Rick could only possibly be bridge guy because there was no other man on the trails. I always go back to the fact that Bree Wilbur says she saw one or two people as they were walking back. So you're right there, Gilletta. They make out like it was just Bridge Guy and Rick Allen at that point, and so they must be the same person. But realistically as well, there weren't so many people that you wouldn't be able to do a pretty good job at kind of tracking who was or wasn't there. And I actually agree that the people involved in this crime potentially wouldn't show up in that geofencing or cast analysis. At least they didn't show up at the crime scene. Um, well, what they call the crime scene, which is where the bodies were found. Of course, the crime scene extends from the Monon High Bridge to that area. But yeah, it's still flabbergasting. Like I didn't understand enough about geofencing and cast initially to fully recognize why what was provided to the defense was absurd. I always said that geofencing could be the key, but when you see the mapping that was done by Agent Kevin Horan for the actual location of the bodies and the phones that pinged in that area, that tells us that there is no doubt in my mind that there would have been similar mapping for the Monon High Bridge, for the trails in general at large. And if Rick's phone doesn't ping at all on the trails that day, then that would be a problem. Okay. Because they would have used that against him. And I think who was it that said that today? I feel like it might have been Peggy who said that in Cryptex and Peggy did a live earlier today, my time. Sorry, it probably was a different time for you guys. But yeah, I mean, realistically, come on. As if they wouldn't use that fact that his phone doesn't ping there that day against him. It doesn't make sense. So I don't believe that his phone didn't ping there that day. Oh, hey, Dave. Nice to see you. Yeah, just there's just no way to me. So it's yeah, if you guys don't notice anything else that's wrong with the state's case, really look into the fact that the digital data doesn't make sense and why on earth were they so desperate to have that digital data left out. And I know I always get back to this point because it's so important though. Um, yeah. So look, we've crossed off a couple of Tom's points. I am going to go through way more of them over the next little while. I will listen to the 6 hours, but as I said before, it drove me nuts. The little bits that I have heard, and I'm going to be honest, both sides drove me nuts. Thanks so much, Dave. Everyone, check out Al on the Prowl. Dave he has a wonderful channel. Please drop your link, Dave, as well. He has a wonderful channel, goes over a lot more different crimes, not just Delphi. He's a little bit more varied than I am, but wonderful channel and wonderful guy. He's really, really kind. Um, Yes, I will listen to the 6 hours. I'm on holidays again. I know I feel like I'm always on holidays, everyone, but I'm on holidays for this next week. We're going to the beach. The rain is um, apparently going away. It is full on today, but hopefully it's going away. Anyway, side note, yes, we're going to the beach and I'll have some time, I'm sure, to listen to the debate on put my earpods in while we're on the beach. But yeah, both sides upset me in their responses because, we've got Tom Webster who has this very rigid, one dimensional view where everything's twisted for Rick to be the guy. And then you've got the defense with their, from what I've seen, they're kind of bumbling answers. And then of course again some absurd claims as well. So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed, but it is what it is. And it's a hard one. I don't think that I would do a wonderful job of debating this, not because I don't believe in Rick's innocence, but because there are so many facts that you have to constantly kind of amalgamate and integrate in your mind in order to make sense of this case. And, some of us here, we do it every day, all day, not all day, but a lot of the day. I listen to most Delphi streams, to be honest. I don't think there's many that I've never listened to. There are some people I'd listen to more often than others, but I've listened to so many, and yet still, like, getting my head around it all. I've read so much of the transcripts and exhibits and listened to so much of the trial stuff, and yet still it's like, oh, there's this and then there's this and then there's this and there's so many layers to it. It's such a complicated web. It's just not an easy case to debate, I don't think. But I hope that with the few points that I've raised today, or at least getting that ball rolling around debunking some of the main points of guilt, that are kind of thrown around. Gillette, you reckon the FBI thinks it's Ron Logan? Yeah, it's interesting because I guess for me, I don't believe it's Ron Logan. I think at the end of the day, all of the people who were considered suspects, other than Rick Allen, certainly had problematic behaviors in their past. And, I think there's a lot of people who have been, who are around the area, and it does feel almost sort of too coincidental, doesn't it? When you see, well, they were found on the land of a man who was, reported or allegedly quite a violent man. And, there was a guy catfishing in the area that, you know, was catfishing young girls and could have been the offender. But I guess for me, I always go back to offender profiles and matching like the scene and the crime to the offenders. And I really don't feel like Ron Logan matches. I also am really curious because you notice in Ron Logan's PCA for the search warrant, they talk about his phone pinging, maybe near the crime scene in the evening, and then it sort of disappears after the search warrant. There is no further um, investigation of Ron Logan after that, and they do actually obtain his phone. And so, to me, and I've explained this in some previous videos, I think that they were using the NELO's timing advance type digital data to try and place people and probably also to rule people out, i.e., Rick. And I think that once they actually got Ron Logan's phone, I would be pretty sure they would have done a full extraction. And when they've done a full extraction, they've realized that Ron Logan isn't hanging around the crime scene in the evening, and that's why they've dropped him. That's just my speculative theory, but I think it makes sense because otherwise, why would the FBI just completely drop him? I think that the FBI truly did believe that it was some of the other third party culprits that the defense posed. So when I say I disagree with some of the defense's theory, I don't disagree with a lot of the stuff that they raise, just certain aspects that they get stuck on where I'm like, no, please don't go down that road. I don't think that's going to work. But, you know, I'm not in charge, as we know. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Gilletta. I think there really is so much chatter that happened in the early days that a lot of us missed. Um, because yeah, I've seen screenshots and stuff from online, and oh gosh, I'd be so curious for sure because I think a lot of locals and people kind of talking to locals on Reddit and things like that, there was a lot of info that's no longer there anymore. So interesting, definitely. Let's see. See through. Actually, if you read Holman's deposition, he doesn't make any sense. So he does say that the geofencing was useful, and then later he says it wasn't useful. And what he's discussing, it cannot be geofencing in that deposition because geofencing doesn't do, they would never put a geofence around the entire area of Delphi. It would not include Richard Allen's house as well as the crime scene, which suggests he's talking about tower dumps. And again, I always feel like they try to distance themselves from geofencing as it really is in the cast analysis because it's far more accurate than anything that they discuss. And as you go between Logan and Odinism, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I I lean more towards the second. I think that it's not purely ritualistic. I think it's what I call pseudo ritualistic. It's an organized sadistic crime with ritualistic kind of signatures and elements to it. Whether it was a ritual itself, I don't think it would be, but it could be, of course. But it has a lot of hallmarks of sadism. And so I kind of see it as a bit of a merging of a few different motives, I suppose, but I don't see it as a reactive crime to cover up a sexual assault. That's for sure. Yeah, USA libertarian, no defense is allowed. Exactly. The things that could have helped Rick weren't allowed. I think the main thing that I feel could have helped that needed to, well, no, actually, no, you're right. It couldn't have, because I was going to say geofencing was suppressed. They weren't allowed to talk about third party culprits. I mean, I think the psychology stuff could have been, uh, you know, hammered in a little bit more, but I don't know that it would have made a massive difference, to be honest. Oh, I'm so with you with that part though, RC. I mean, the alibi and the timing, that is definitely huge, and it definitely makes you go, yeah, what's going on there? I don't know. I mean, I've postulated before that maybe uh, Ron's aware of something. He was aware of something, and he had to cover up as well, because I feel like whoever is responsible for this holds it over the heads of anyone who had any knowledge of it, even if they weren't directly involved. I feel like whoever the linchpin is, I suppose, of this crime, the person who is the organized sadist, that's the person that's kind of holding the strings of all the puppets, if that makes sense. Anders is saying Logan walks exactly like Bridge Guy. Yeah, maybe. Look, I don't know. I haven't like looked at some of that analysis as much, but yeah, interesting. 100% USA libertarian. And as yes, staging and ritualistic for sure. I mean, my theory is symbolic staging, i.e., signature, or they call it tableau. And there's definitely symbolism there. Two bodies don't fall in tarot slash Odinistic positions for no reason. Like that's one of those coincidences that we couldn't actually ever completely hand wave away, right? If one fell in a position where you're like, well, that kind of looks a little bit like a symbolic position of a tarot or Odinistic figure, sure, but two, like that's too much, right? Gilletta says, I think it's actually people in some kind of high power or social status that reward money pot went sky high very quickly. Agree with you. I think that's very possible. And yeah, Jenny, there is no DNA to link him at all. And there's no, I mean, look, the DNA, again, I probably have a slightly fringe opinion here. I tend to think that the DNA wasn't going to be able to help solve the case for anyone, but certainly, yes, Rick is not implicated by the DNA. Oh, for sure. And as the sticks are not for hiding the bodies. I keep hearing people still suggesting it's concealment. It's concealment from the creek, from the private drive. Like, no, 3% of the bodies, that's not concealment. Yeah, I hate to, be so absolutist about it, but it's not concealment. There was so much there to conceal the bodies. Why would you do that? As you all know, if you watch my channel, I think that the sticks have at least one of the purposes of the sticks is functional, and that is to hold the bodies in the positions that they lay in. Bodies don't naturally fall in those positions or stay in those positions because essentially the body crumples and kind of moves into, not specific positions, but it certainly wouldn't naturally look the way that it's staged there, I don't think. Oh, hey, Ecurb. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Oh, hi, Aisha. Thank you for joining too. Someone believing he's guilty is irrelevant. No, for sure, you'll say libertarian. I think the majority of us actually, I think, not majority, but a large majority of us here is, we're a lot of us are free Rick Allen, and I think a lot of us believe he's factually innocent. But yeah, you don't even have to believe he's factually innocent. You just need to believe that it was a fair trial, and it wasn't. I think most people would agree. See through. There were two big donors. I'm not sure. Are we talking about DNA maybe too? And is the male DNA inside them. I'm still. I mean, I've looked at the DNA evidence so many times and tried to figure it out. I mean, there's so many layers of science to this case, and it's like I just I struggle to like integrate it all. I think that the DNA that was found inside them that had the presumptive test for sperm, that was a positive. Now, that means it could be sperm. It doesn't completely rule out it's sperm. They didn't then do the confirmatory analysis, but what they did do was a DNA analysis. Now, the DNA analysis, I thought, is that the one where they said there wasn't evidence of a Y chromosome? So they couldn't actually say it was male, but I'm not sure. I'll need to look into that again. I have looked into the DNA stuff before, but haven't gone into lots of detail on it. It's interesting as well because I know people will kind of laugh a little bit at the whole laundry theory and male DNA. Why would there be male DNA? Apparently, males do shed more DNA than females. I thought that sounded like junk science to me, but apparently, it's actually a thing. So there you go. Interesting. Let's see. Donors. In terms of rewards, see through. I don't know about that. Who was that? Who were the donors? And RC says the defense talked a lot about the deleted power logs on the phone. Yeah, so I think the issue, as far as I can tell, and this is where, guys, I've actually literally got a guy who has training in Knowledge C, and who trains other people in Knowledge C, as far as I can see from his online profile. I really want to speak to him, and I am going to. He charges $100, I'm guessing American dollars because he's in the States, $100 an hour. And I decided that I'm happy to do at least a couple of hours. I mean, what I earn from this channel so far is probably nothing, actually, if I took out all of the subscriptions and things that I pay for. But regardless, I'm like, I want to do it. I enjoy doing the channel, so I never expected to earn money from the channel. But the money that's earned from the ads on the videos for the watch time and stuff, not watch time, but you know what I mean, and the few memberships that I have, which is only a few, like 3, but there's some money there. So I'm going to at least have an hour or two with this guy and ask some questions about the Knowledge C data, and we'll start there. And I've got at least one other person who wants to contribute to that. So if you guys are interested and want to contribute in some way, I did put a post up. I will figure out how we do that. I don't know whether that would be through super chats or memberships or any of that sort of stuff. But I mean, if you do donate anything to the channel, actually, I never even put like any goals up or anything, because I don't really want people to like feel that I'm asking for money and things like that. But I mean, essentially, yeah, if you guys are able to do that, then that could help us to maybe get another person's perspective on the Knowledge C data, because there's so much that still needs to be figured out. But what I think is going on with the Knowledge C data is that the phone does die. And as such, the power logs may not be particularly useful regardless. But I mean, yes, them turning it on and off doesn't help at all. For sure. Let's have a little look at and as I've heard about the idea of shooting blanks. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a possibility. It's interesting though. A presumptive positive for semen can actually be the result. It can be a false positive in the result of female fluids and things like that too. Oh, Christine said it as well. Okay, yeah, interesting. Christine's lovely. I really like Christine. I'll have to ask her too. Yeah, Lola, it is. Hi, by the way, Lola, nice to see you. It is confusing. So when I've looked through it, I mean, there's too many areas that you need to try and have expertise in to understand all the evidence. So I haven't dipped into this too far, but my understanding is, so a presumptive test for semen is susceptible to false positives. So it could be a false positive. They didn't then do the confirmatory analysis because they didn't want to use up the sample. But what they did do was then they tested then for a DNA profile. And then the DNA profile, what was I going to say? DNA profile. I feel like that's the one where then they didn't have a Y chromosome. But I'll double check, guys. I'll come back to you with that. Sandy, for sure. I mean, I actually don't even know what the membership price is. I actually think I just did whatever was suggested. But if I can lower it, I'm totally lower it for sure. Yeah, because I hope everybody knows here that I definitely don't do this for money. I don't really want anyone to think that I do at all, because that was never the purpose of the channel at all. Just simply because I actually want to make sure that I'm one of many people advocating for Rick and for the girls. So, yeah, I'll have a look at that, Sandy. Thank you for letting me know, and I'll definitely, if I can lower it, I'll lower it. I mean, like, for me, all I really care about is that people engage, and if you like my videos, that you do a like, if you subscribe. Those are the things, that the metrics that make my heart happy, because it means that I'm not wasting my time, I suppose. Because sometimes it does feel like that when you do like lots and lots of hours worth of stuff and not a lot of people are watching it. It does feel like it's like, well, what's the point? Like, I'm kind of talking into a void. And of course, you guys are the point, the people all in here listening and talking. But yeah, I do, as you know, I put a lot of time into this. So if you like what you see, if you think I'm actually making any good points, or at least making a little difference, please like the videos and let me know, because that definitely does a lot for my morale for sure. Anyway, yeah, so the knowledge seeking, I'll let you guys know. I'm definitely going to invest a few $100s at least in trying to understand it, because I'm kind of at this point where I'm like so invested in it as well. But yeah, if more people want to do that, then we could probably get more information as well. I feel like I don't want to put this person on my channel though, because I think I mean, obviously it's their choice, but I think that the climate of the Delphi online community isn't always great for your mental health and your nervous system. So anyway, I won't put someone who's out of that sphere into it unless they really are well informed first. Anyway, guys, so I mean, I didn't get into lots of Tom Webster's stuff today because you know me, I wanna really like drill in hard and not just do a quick job of responding to his arguments. We've got some more to come. Oh, thanks, Sandy. Yeah, I didn't even know that, to be honest. It's interesting, like, yeah, because I didn't even really know that you could change that. So I will change that for sure. Please never think that I'm trying to do something that's that's kind of trying to get more money and things like that. Never. Definitely don't. I don't like that to be any perception of me. It's not my personality to do that, if that makes sense. Yep. Okay, so just going to go back to, no, that's memory. Wait a minute. I want to take that one off. And I'm going to put up the rest of Tom's. I'm getting people's names muddled up today. Tom's arguments up. And we're going to just have a quick look. So the rest of the ones that I'm going to focus on over the next little while. So we've talked a little bit about timeline and witness claims. Sorry, I'm talking a little bit quieter too, guys, because it's late here. My kitties are asleep. My dog's snoring next to me. Rick's own statement and timelines. We're going to go here next. Bridge guy similarity claims. Phone and digital evidence claims. You know I'm going to like that one. Evidence and weapon claims. Do we even need to debunk that, guys? I think we've already done that, but we can do it again. False confessions and behavior claims. Again, we've done this to death, but we'll keep going. Post-crime behavior claims. Yeah, so there's psychology stuff down there. We've got the tool mark analysis here. We've got digital stuff, and then we've got the similarity to Bridge Guy, which we all know is not similar to Bridge Guy. So, yeah. Okay. I'll read a few more comments and then I'm gonna finish up. 100% USA Libertarian. It's interesting as well because this case has been going on for so long. I'd love to be able to do some sort of an analysis of what the media was saying about it before, and I'm sure some of you guys know. Like, was the crime window known about? Like, did people know it? Because obviously we all know now. We know the 213 and the 207. I just wonder how much was known back in the day, and also whether Rick would have known that stuff. I mean, we deep dive into this crime. Like, everybody in here, listens to hours and hours of Delphi content and has done for months, if not years. And so I can't forget the time of this crime, but most people wouldn't know it. But I suppose what the people who think he's guilty would say was that, well, if he's the offender, he would be all across that. Which is why it's really interesting when you look at his search history. He really doesn't search very much about the crime. So interesting. William says, Abby was with Logan Holder, who was on Libby's bones on the Sunday night, started the fight. See him bring right back. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, William. Yeah, USA Libertarians make a good point. So when the cop says, could you have been there at this time? Alan could respond, sure, not knowing he needs to be exact. Exactly. And yeah, you're talking about Kelsey's hair and the clump of hair. It's really interesting for sure. Oh, hey, Critter Mama. Nice to see you. Nice kitty cat in your picture. And hey, Mercedes. Lovely to see you too. Yeah, gosh, there's just so much, guys. There's so much to talk about with this, isn't there? Yes, Mercedes. I mean, that's concerning, isn't it? When there's a few comments made by an individual that actually seem to more align with what happened, and yet that's not a nexus. Yeah. Well, we can see there's a lot of bias in this case, and whether you think Rick's guilty or not, we can see that there's this massive bias towards kind of putting him in the hot seat while so many other people are just ignored. I think most of us could agree that it would be reasonable to explore a lot of the others way more than was explored. So there are people who came up as tips over and over again, and yet they were kind of just pushed aside and kind of dismissed. And yeah, I mean, it's really hard to see who did they actually investigate properly in this case. It just doesn't feel like there was a lot, right? Oh, hey, Charlotte, nice to see you. Yeah, guys. I mean, yeah, Gilletta, exactly. Why did they care so much if they got the answer that they wanted? And I mean, a few weeks ago when I did the Lost Tip fairy tale, I literally listened to Doug Carter, and I put him on, and I stopped at various points in the way he's talking about how amazing the investigators are, and I'm like, well, if we're to believe that they're amazing, then why on earth is it that these amazing law enforcement actually didn't do anything about Rick back in 2017? Like, that's not a particularly amazing investigation if we're to believe that Rick is the offender. It's ludicrous. And I still to this day don't understand why people didn't actually lose their jobs over this. I know Anders just talking about Wyler losing her job, but I'm talking more about the investigators. Like, Holman was the lead investigator, and yet he let it slip, and yet he's being put on a pedestal. It's just it's a lot. Well, guys, thanks so much for being here again. I will do some more about Tom Webster over the next little while. I'm not going to be doing as many lives as I did before, just because I need to get a bit more balance, and I will be inserting some more psychology stuff in for those of you who are interested in psychology. got lots of psychology content that I want to put out there as well, but I'm going to be super perfectionistic, so they may end up being delayed because the more that something is an area that I know a lot about, the more perfectionistic I get. So I'll try to be less perfectionistic. Maybe this is why I needed to do Delphi, because it forced me to just keep putting content out. And yeah, I was like, nope, I'm going to keep going. Oh, Asha, did you join as a member? I think you did, because you're in green now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Um, Thanks, everybody. Yes, I will stick around. As I said in my posts, I get emotional, and then I'm like, I need to just escape, and then I come back again because I can't actually completely let go. But I'm gonna probably just do what kind of feels right and be a bit more intuitive about it rather than trying to keep up with the momentum of Delphi, which almost involves like uh, daily content at this stage. But I don't think I can do that. But yeah, really appreciate everybody's support, and I'll try and get to all of Tom's stuff over the next little while. So thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend or rest of the weekend or week if we're over here in Australia. We're about to go into Monday. So love and light to everyone. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.